Let's get into it. Obviously, not a Masters 1000 week. Madrid starting this week, qualifying going on now. I will be on TC Live starting Wednesday evening throughout the entirety of the tournament. I'll be on for Rome as well. So you will be sick and tired of me if you are a TC Live watcher. Two guys that I feel like take out the Novaks, the Alcarazes, the Medvedev, like these guys who you know are going to put points on the board. Zverev, maybe to a lesser extent. Two guys that really need the clay court season. Like this is their opportunity to run up the scoreboard. This is their red zone, right? They're inside the 20-yard line. The first two off where this could dictate them being 5 in the world, 4 in the world, or 15 in the world at a given moment. Casper Ruud, Stefanos Tsitsipas, right? Talk about taking advantage of a surface change. Ruud actually played pretty well in the beginning of the season. Hard, not his favorite, but he's certainly a capable hardcore player. Finals of U.S. Open, finals of Miami, finals of World Tour finals. Tsitsipas is finals of Australia. I mean, they're capable, but their best, most effective favorite surface consistently is going to be clay. These guys playing great stuff. Finally in Monte-Carlo, Tsitsipas wins 1-4. Run it back in Barcelona. And Casper Ruud takes the title. Did not lose a set in Barcelona. This is big for him because he's kind of sometimes had like a slow run into the clay court season where it's like, oh no, he needs to pick up some points, and then all of a sudden he makes a French Open final, and that's that. But these guys impressive, especially Tsitsipas. Like he was struggling, right? Anyone who was hitting big could attack the middle of the court. He was trying to find something for this entire season, and then to get some space and then create a win at Monte-Carlo, back it up with a final. And now people are saying like this is a heavy schedule. They're playing there's some space in these 10-day events. Like this is, I remember winning in 03 and the next year, I almost made the finals back-to-back again, but playing 12 matches in 13 days to win Montreal, Cincinnati. The next year I came one short, so I played 11 matches in 13 days. That is impossible, right? That is you feel like a bag of shit after those 2 weeks, and thankfully you have a week before. But these guys have done their job, and now they have 2 or 3 days off before Madrid. They're most likely not going to get scheduled before Thursday. They might even get a Friday start, Saturday. I don't know. They can push it back, but they've earned that rest, and now they can kind of reset, and they're not going to be overloaded, but they do have the matches. Props to them. First title that Casper Ruud wins above the 250 level. Everyone chirping after Monte-Carlo. And it's not as if the guy hasn't played great in big tournaments. He's made 3 Grand Slam finals. Like there's not like a block where he can't play a big match.
Well, let me ask you a question. And the short answer, the one-word answer is sports. But I'm not sure there are a lot of pursuits out there, sports, not sports, where you could have one result on one Sunday and then run it back and have the exact opposite result. What's your, the surface didn't change, the conditions weren't particularly different. What's your explanation for why Tsitsipas can beat Ruud on one Sunday, 7 days later, complete opposite result? Explain that to the casual fan, because that's not something you see at, in we don't even have to keep this in tennis, right? I mean, you don't have a UFC fight and they run it back a week later, it's a different result. How do you explain that?
Yeah, I mean, even if the conditions change a little, if it's a little bit heavier in Barcelona than it is in Monte-Carlo, the match going in, Ruud played some longer matches going in to the final there. But I actually kind of disagree, because you'll have NBA series that go 7 games where they're flip-flopping games, every week. What I think is like, okay, Ruud he went something like, Twitter finger is going to ruin me on this, but he went something like 0 for 8 or 0 for 9 on break points in the Monte-Carlo final. So then it looks like a lopsided scoreline. He wins 2 or 3 of those, we're even Steven, right? And so I haven't looked at the numbers for break points won from the Barcelona match, but I'm assuming it's got to be like, 3 for 7. That's everything, right? You can literally, if I told you to look at one stat for a match that would tell the story, break points won and break points converted, right? So Ruud all of a sudden misses a couple of shots last week in Monte-Carlo. He had 3 forehands that I remember from the backhand corner, which is what he wants to get around. He creates more RPMs on his forehand than Rafa, if you can believe that. It's not the shot. He doesn't get the space. He's not lefty. Not saying it's a better shot than Rafa, but just as far as spin rate, the last 3 or 4 years, he's been the best on tour. Gets into that backhand corner, ready to fire where he takes control of it, and rolled over 3 in the net on break points. Like rolled, just didn't even make Tsitsipas play. Barcelona, it's different. So even though it seems like a route one week and then a reverse route the next week, it's those breakpoint conversions. He created the opportunities in Monte-Carlo. He converted the opportunities in Barcelona. Maybe your service percentage goes up 6 or 7%. That's worth a break. That's worth a break. At least one break. If you're up 8, 10%, that's worth 2 breaks. Like it's all these little numbers that don't seem like much. And if we're playing a match between professionals with 2 top 10 players, 7, 8 in the world, the margins are 2 or 3%. All of those little mini battles inside of a match create the scoreline, right? So even though it seems lopsided and like a huge flip, I would probably say it's a couple things here and there where Ruud played a little bit better this week. He went through the draw a lot easier this week. Start to finish, didn't lose a set. Tsitsipas struggled a little bit. One match, I think it was 8-6 in the 3rd set breaker along the way, but kind of got through it. I don't know. Like you could have 2 guys box, and obviously they got to put their faces back together. But one could be 4-round knockout, one could go the distance. It just matters time and place, and if you miss your shot to throw that uppercut, and then you got to wait 4 rounds for that same opportunity. It's the tiniest things at the highest level of execution that dictate a scoreline or dictate a result. At this point, they can all play, especially towards the latter rounds of a tournament. You don't get to a final often and have someone lay a turd, right? Like they're playing well. They've won 5 matches already. They always say the best time to play one of the top players is if they've been off for a while in the first couple rounds. Like they haven't had that match cadence yet. So I actually don't think it's as much of an outlier. Maybe
no, I don't think it's an outlier. I think it happens a lot, and I think it's actually a real virtue of tennis that you say, boy, you can throw out what happened 7 days ago. It's a completely different match. That's a good point about the breaks. I mean, I also don't know. Let's not forget Ruud also beat Novak in what might well be one of the top 5 wins of his career. But I do think you see this in tennis more than in other sports, where a result in week A doesn't mean a whole lot in week B. And I think it's something, there's going to be a theme of our podcast is that expectations are going to have to be adjusted after the Roger, Rafa, Novak, Serena days. But I think it actually speaks really well of tennis that two guys can play 2 Sundays in a row. It could be a completely different match.
Your take on the mental ability it takes for Ruud. Hadn't won I think he was 0-5 or 0-6 against Novak going in, and hadn't won a set. So wins their first set in Monte-Carlo. It's the first time he's ever won a set against Novak. Lose the second, you're going, oh gosh, can I just hold on? Is this gonna maybe I'll never win it again? It's a fine line between saying like forever. And he mentioned this. He said, Casper said, I can tell my grandkids I beat Novak Djokovic 1 time on a day, and no one can ever take that away from me. That's a lot of stuff to be thinking about when you're on the court. When you were saying that, like the mental toll it takes, and I think it's absolutely accurate. I think mental effort is a choice, but what you have mentally and how exhausted you are isn't a choice, right? Effort's a choice. Those often get confused. I went back to my last year on tour, as you were saying it in my head. I spent a decade pretty much only losing to Roger, and then the last year for like 4 months, he's like kind of like one of the only guys I could beat. In Miami, it was like round of 32. I was playing like a donkey all year, like an absolute donkey, and that might be offensive to donkeys. And we match up. There's no. I'd go into Wimbledon final like I have a puncher's chance. I can. I would believe, like I believe that, not that I was better, but that I could win. Right? There's a difference between the two. I knew at scale I was never better than Roger Federer. On a given day, can I throw a right hand uppercut and beat Roger Federer. Yeah. So this last year, 2012, I have no business winning this match. Win a first set in a breaker, lose a second set 6-1. Like total points won, he had to be up like 20. It was such an outlier that we were tied. Break in the third set, and I am just like choking my way to the finish line for the rest of the set. Going too deep here, but my agent had passed like 5 or 6 months earlier. Like I had this thing where I was like having open conversations with him while I was on the court, right? It was like, let's just get through. And he was in his hometown. His wife was there, the whole thing. It was very emotional for me. End up winning that match somehow against Federer. I'm 30 in the world and he's like 2. Like it makes no sense. And it was like this joy. I was in the round of 16. Like there was no, it wasn't as if I won a tournament. It wasn't as if I've been in the round of 16 Miami 12 times at that point. And I'm like, okay, let's turn the year around. I go up the next day against Juan Monaco. Good player, solid player. Also not Roger Federer. Lose 5-0. Literally couldn't get myself to, I had used so much mental reserve in that match against Roger that it was just, I came out the next day and I was like, I'm trying so hard and I just can't create those feelings. The same physically, mentally, like it just takes so much out of you. So I think that's a great point with Ruud, Novak getting routed by Tsitsipas in the final, maybe not having that mental reserve to convert those break points. A week later, he does.